allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did you open the curtain for me?
No, last week I did. Yes.
Consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. We'll go ahead and move on to our consent agenda. I'd consider a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I'd ask for items number 2 and 3 to be removed from the consent agenda.
All right. So with that change, I'd consider a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Clarification, are these being put to the top of the regular business then?
Yeah, that'd be fine, yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
No.
Commissioner Schmidt,
No.
Commissioner Landine.
No.
Move for approval of consent agenda?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Point of order. A question for the chair. Since this is a consent agenda, and the way that it's worked is we can pull these items out, are these items in fact pulled out upon request by a member?
I'm not sure if I understand your question. Normally, we vote on the consent agenda, and if we're gonna take things off,
Are items 2 and 3 in fact pulled off the consent agenda under the vote that we're, under the motion that we're under right now?
no.
So in fact, we cannot remove agenda items from the consent agenda anymore?
Well, we can, but we usually vote on it. Am I wrong about that?
Well, isn't the whole purpose of a consent agenda to include only those items which have consent? And if they don't have consent, they are moved to the regular agenda, correct?
It's fine with me if we move them to the regular agenda for discussion, if that's what your issue is.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Yep.
Is
We
that
can-
the case here?
Yep, I would ask to move those to the regular agenda.
Madam Chair, I think you at your discretion can do that.
All right, well, then I'm gonna do it.
Okay.
So items 2 and 3 will be on our regular agenda. So I'd like a motion to approve item 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of our consent agenda.
So move, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Now we'll go on to our opportunity for public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who would wish to come up? Good morning. You just state your name and address, please.
Good morning, Carla Lenz, 47980 280 First Street, Canton. Thank you all for serving. There we go. I sent all of you an email, hopefully that you received it. I had 3 different items that I had concerns on. I'm only going to mention one today, and that one is, I did want to mention, I did watch the commission meeting from last week. I appreciated the canvassing efforts of the board. I had never watched that before, but I'm glad, to see the process and how that has been accomplished. However, I am completely against any computerized interference in our voting system, and I would urge you to vote no on the e-poll books. In addition to my opposition on the grounds of outside interference in our elections, I just think the amount for those is way more than what we can afford right now with what we're looking at in the budget. $77,500. And I just think that there could be other places that that money could be more well spent. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Betty Otten, 46787 273rd Street, NT. I too sent you all an email last night, and I do have packets in front of you of what I sent. I too am very much against, I'm actually appalled that you would bring up having poll pads after last Thursday's referendum election, because some of the Sioux Falls polling places were changed, and not once were any of the voters notified that they had a new polling place to go to. And not even out front of the old polling place was there a placard that directed voters to go to their new place for this temporary polling place. They called me. I know that they said that they had called Sherry, and they had no clue of where to go. Most people don't know that you go to the Secretary of State's website and look up where you're supposed to vote. And then, again, the cost of these, so if you can't afford to mail out places for these voters to go vote, then you didn't have, if money's the issue, then that's my point here too. $77,500 for 40 of these, and then it costs, on top of that, if you have a problem or something that they have to come, then the support is $275 per times 40 for them to come out to support those poll pads. So if the issue is, and I said in my email that I've been in contact with Steve Barnett, the Secretary of State, and if you're talking about, if the discussion today is talking about changing into a poll center where you can go any place in Lincoln County to vote, well, that's a whole different subject. But my question again is, why wasn't in all the documents that were loaded on the your website today, why wasn't the why wasn't the $77,500? Why wasn't that link on there? I had to go back because I was in here when that happened, and that was on June 8th. But it's nowhere to be found in today's agenda that that's the cost of this particular of the poll pads. So. I had all of the information on the poll centers, what you had to do, and including that if you went to a poll center, every one of those paper books had to, per law, South Dakota law, and I gave that to you in the packet today and on your email, you have to have every single voter a registration list at every one of those polling places if you make it a voting center, and then you also have to have the fully bound paper book at the same time. That's a lot of money, and that's a lot of voters. And according to the video on June 8th, Commissioner Ahrens stated right there that he is in one of the busiest polling places ever, and took him no time at all to register or to go up, register, and then vote. So, and then I'm going to leave that because the problems with no ink are beyond belief anyway, and I put both of those copies in your packet that I sent out for you today. And then the other thing is I believe that my husband, Representative Ernie Otten, sent you all a copy of the South Dakota Department of Transportation where they got past HB 1259, where he said he'd worked for, he's been in transportation up in Pierre for, since he got up there. And they finally got monies to come down for infrastructure for the townships and rural access areas to be used to replace some of the old World War II bridges and culverts. So my question again is that Lincoln County got $52,359, and I realize it's not a roundabout price, but did that go in, can anybody let us know if that went into this year's budget or next year's budget? And so that's my concern as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, if not, we will move on to any commissioner reports.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. I had an opportunity to travel out to see the closed bridge on 475th and 294th. I went out there this weekend on Saturday. The road closed signs were up. Thank you to the Highway Department for putting those up, alerting to the public that the bridge in fact is closed. I did walk around the bridge. There is, I don't know, there's a lot of erosion around the bottom of the bridge. I'm not a bridge expert, not an engineer. Certainly it's been closed for a reason though. And one of the things I also noticed is that someone apparently pushed the road closed signs to the side of the road, and then there was dimples in the gravel. You could tell it was like a tractor or something that crossed over the bridge. Looked pretty fresh, but apparently people are still crossing over the bridge even though the road closed signs are there. So I certainly want to encourage the public in terms of public safety. Please adhere to the road closed signs. That bridge is closed for a reason. Let's get it checked out and tested by our highway department. Certainly, we do not want to have some kind of tragic accident there because somebody wants to, have a shorter trip. And I understand there's a lot of pressure during harvest season to want to get the crop out and to not want to have to drive a tractor 4 miles around the section. I get that. I had to drive a tractor with wagons when I was a kid growing up, and so we don't want to have to do that. But we want people to be safe, and we also want to be able to take a look at our infrastructure here. This is certainly an example of infrastructure that needs to be replaced, and granted, it's not a very busy road, but it is important to the people who live there. And so this is an example of where infrastructure dollars could go in order to create a safer path for the public to travel. Thank you.
Any other commissioners have a report today?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a comment. After reflecting on last Tuesday's election, I think that there were a lot of things that came to my mind as to why that was probably defeated, but I want to pay a compliment to the opposition. You know, you can't be upset with individuals that take on the initiative because they disagree with an action that the commission has taken. That's what our government is all about. I don't have any animosity or anything. I kind of respect their tenacity. But what it did show is that we as commissioners do a miserable job alerting the public on what it is that we do. I had countless phone calls from individuals that didn't even know there was an election, let alone what they were voting on. So consequently, I think it's incumbent upon this commission to take the time to hold the public meetings, to go out to the public and let them know what the issues are, why we take whatever actions we take, and let them be informed. Because what has happened over time is that we get issues that are probably clouded. It's like the old telephone game where you say a comment at the beginning and it gets, by the time it gets to the end, it's entirely different than what it was. I had a lot of individuals, after we explained to them what the vote was all about, probably had a different opinion. But that's neither here nor there. My issue is we have to go and begin the process of becoming much more transparent to the public on what it is. Whether it's on our website, whether it is we have a Facebook page for the county to just give our story, but better yet, that we would go to publics, whether it's town hall meetings in all the cities or in Sioux Falls, and let the public know what we're doing. Let them ask the questions, and let's give them the answers. Because if we are correct in what our governing ideas are, they can judge that by an election. But that came home pretty doggone clear to me, that we did a pretty lousy job on that, and I still believe that. And I think that we won't have as divisive enough issues, which we have right now, because we have such a divided society on about everything. It may be able to come to consensus on issues that are confronting us, whether it's courtroom space, whether it's a jail, whether it's roads, whether it's bridges. We have a lot of big challenges out there. And it seems to me we have to start addressing those big issues, because those are the ones that we can't put aside, and we can't kick the can down the road every week on this. These are major things that I think this commission has to engage in some long-range planning. And when you hold these public meetings, you can gauge from the public what they're thinking. So all in all, I think that the lesson was well learned, at least by me, on the last election. So it's my intent to be out and try to inform the public as much as we can on not only our taxes, but on the other issues. Thank you for your time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have reports? If not, we'll move on to our regular business. It was consent agenda item number 2, hiring Joseph Metter. Julia, do you want to come up for these to answer any questions? And this is the civil deputy state's attorney spot that we had previously approved, correct?
Correct, yes,
And that has been approved in our budget. Is that also correct?
yes.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Julia, what will be the, how much will this position cost for an entire year, for the annual year?
Approximately $100,000 with benefits.
And so this position, is this a new position, or is this? Sorry. My apologies. Is this a new position, or is this a position being filled that was previously vacated by another employee?
This is the new position that was previously approved by the commission roughly a couple months ago.
Okay, so this would represent a new service to the taxpayers, correct? It's
That's
not-
my understanding, yes.
And then, do you know what percentage of the time, and if you can't answer this, maybe the state's attorney's office can, but I read the position posting for this, and I was a little unclear on this. Do you know what, if any, percentage of time that this individual will spend on services to victims of crime?
I'll have to defer to the state's attorney's office.
The intention is for the position to mainly be civil, but with our office, we're kind of on that brink of, we're not big enough to have everybody solely specialized, so we all pitch in. So if we have 1 or 2 attorneys out sick, then I get to go to court. So it could be situations like that where he may have to make an appearance. It isn't expected that he's going to be dedicating much time to the criminal side unless we go up by another third, in which case we wind up with all hands on deck. We also have been in a situation where we've been looking at 85 trials on a stack week. And so sometimes we have to pitch in and go ahead and prep 2 or 3 trials in case they're going to go, because we just don't have enough coverage, and we need to be able to prep 6, 7 cases deep in case they don't settle. So in cases like that, there's a possibility we all pitch in and do that, but the intention is to handle a lot of the civil work, specifically with department heads and other things, so that it frees me up to work on other things.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for staff? If not, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I so move, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
No.
Commissioner Gibbon,
No.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is the hire of Jenna Ehlers as a full-time tax and license clerk for the treasurer's office at $16.78 an hour. This was presented last week. Does anybody have any questions for staff? If not, I'd consider.
I
a-
have a question.
ahead.
I've had conversations concerning this. Since our treasurer is an elected official, and she has selected the candidate that she has vetted to, and they have been through that, it then becomes the commission's role to approve that. But is there something that, since she is elected, we're elected, can someone explain that? Is that what this is about, Bill, that you put out?
And going back through the statutes, and that's what I provided to you. The elected officials, the commission appoints the number of employees. The elected official is the one who hires and fires, and they do the appointment.
Okay.
So there is nothing in statute that requires for the commission to come back and approve that, because that authority is actually given to the elected officials for the treasurer's office, the auditor's office, state's attorney's office, for those elected position, register of deeds. So that's what the statute says. I think it has been tradition that all of them have come back to the commission, and I don't know that they require any action, but it has been traditionally that the commission does take action. So I think by statute, once the elected official appoints that individual, at that point in time, they're hired, because they have to file a certificate that says they've been appointed, and that's put into the auditor's office is their appointment, and that's done by the separate offices, not by the commission.
Okay.
And thank you. We have a motion.
I'd move for approval to hire Jenna Ehlers as a full-time tax and license clerk, and that's a replacement position, is it not?
Okay, that's correct. Is there a second? Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
No.
Commissioner Gibbon,
No.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries. We will move on to regular business item, a board action resolution for refinancing of bonds. Tom, were you who's doing this? Sherry, Tom? Okay. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Tom.
Morning.
Can you state your full name, please?
So, Thomas Grimmond from Collier Securities.
Next.
If you put it up, it'll show up there if you put it under the monitor.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
You gonna help me out? Of course I am. Oh, here it is. I knew you guys had something. Yeah. I just gotta figure out how to recenter everything here. Okay. I'm just gonna grab so Tom Grimmond with Collier Securities. You have a couple resolutions before you today. One is to look at the refinancing of the Courthouse Edition. That would be currently callable. The idea would be you've built up some funds in the debt service, the bond redemption fund, use some of those funds to pay down the bonds. Sherry was gonna just take some of that money and pay down the bonds, but then I pointed out you'd still be stuck with the higher interest rates for those bonds. If you could pay them all off, it'd be great, just do that if you had the money. But right now, that's not the case. You have an amount of money in there, but it wouldn't retire all the bonds. So I suggested maybe we look at refinancing it along with paying down the bonds, using that cash balance to pay down the bonds, shortening up the term of the issue and then achieving lower interest rates on the remaining piece of that until you can pay it off completely. So that's the one resolution before you. The other one is a refinancing, a taxable refinancing of the shop that was done a few years ago. So that's, I don't know, that's it in a nutshell. You know, I point out that the other one, the first resolution is a tax exempt refinancing. The second resolution is a taxable refinancing. One of the questions you might have, ask yourself, why are we looking at a taxable refinancing, Tom, and not a tax exempt refinancing? After the tax code was changed in at the end of 2017, advance refundings, meaning refundings ahead of the call date, your shop bonds are not callable yet. It cannot be done anymore, so the only way to do an advance refunding, you could always do it before the tax code changed, and after the tax code change, is to use taxable bonds. So the next question might be, well, why wait? Why not just wait until the bonds are either callable, or we can do them tax exempt, which would be when they're callable. And that's why I brought the graph here to kind of show everybody. You can see where interest rates have been historically and where they are currently. On the back of this, since that's gotten so busy, I've actually blown it up on the back side of it a little bit, going back to before the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, and show you what it is currently. You can see we hit a 60-year low during 2020, mainly brought on probably by COVID, but interest rates were trending down at that time anyway, and then the Fed came in and moved interest rates to near zero. So again, another reason why act now, why, you know, we've done advanced refundings in the past, really advanced refundings, meaning refinancings ahead of the call date, is that if we knew interest rates were gonna be the same today as they would be in the future, then I'd say wait, right? But we don't know where interest rates are gonna be right now. So you get to a certain savings level with the bonds and you say, hey, is it better to, you know, lock in savings now, lock in savings today based on where rates are at, as opposed to gambling of where rates might be in the future. And this graph here really kind of depicts where we're at. I mean, we're bouncing along the bottom of the 2% line. And if you look at what might be considered average interest rates or normal interest rates, you would see something closer to that 3% line. They were trending up until, you can see there at the end of 2020, they were trending upward until COVID hit. So you can see that they were trying to get back to normal. The Fed was actually bumping up interest rates until COVID. And once the economy finally starts to kick in, we do see that possibly happening again. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I would have retired years ago and bet the house on where interest rates were gonna go. So again, I'm just here with an idea. If you don't think the savings is good enough, you think in 3 years when these bonds, and I'm just talking about now the shop bonds, if you think interest rates are gonna be where they're at today in the future, you know, this is where they pay you guys the big bucks and make those decisions. You know, we can just wait. But again, just bringing in the idea, there's savings that are there that have been, and I don't know what to say, actually, if the savings was given to you folks, and maybe I should go over that. But I was thinking that was given out about a month ago or so, and I I can go over that again too if you'd like. But again, this is the reason why I'm coming again. Interest rates are very good right now, as you can see from the chart, and you know, lock them in today and not gamble on where they're going to go in the future. That's kind of the idea behind doing an advanced refunding. And why, again, we're doing taxable as opposed to tax exempt is because we can't do advanced refundings with tax exempt bonds. And again, you could wait until they're tax exempt again at the call date. But again, if this curve moves, you know, even a little bit towards the 3% line, if you're moving 60 basis points, it'll wipe out any savings that you're projecting or think you might get by using tax exempt bonds in the future, even if rates, you know, even if you waited and wanted to use tax exempt bonds. Anyway,
Tom,
hopefully I didn't confuse you too
Can you go
much.
over what the savings is for both the courthouse and the highway shop?
You bet. Good, I brought my readers today. So the taxable highway shop, the projected savings, and I guess, let me throw this up here then, was about $255,000 with a present value savings of 4.7%. In a lot of states, that number has to be, it's actually mandated, it has to be over 3% present value savings before you can do an advance refunding. Usually on my taxable deals, I've been doing refundings on advanced refundings. I'm looking at, anything above 4% as a good trigger point. I mean, really, you can still use 3%. I mean, if you're saving 3%, that's still, kind of the industry standard as a threshold. But again, that's a decision for the commission to make. But again, I'm just bringing the information to you to kind of make a decision, like I
Thank
said.
you.
And then, let's see, here's the Courthouse Edition. And again, this would be a current refunding using some cash. That's why you see at that very first line under savings, that 838,000, that's a negative. That's because I'm netting out the cash that you would be putting into this. You have to do that in these savings analysis. Some people come in and don't do that, and they show this huge savings, but that's your cash. It's not being generated by the refinancing, so I always net it out to give you a true idea of what savings would be. It's not a tremendous amount of savings. Again, where if you look down below there a little bit, I mean, you're under the 3%, but it produces some savings. And it locks in where current interest rates are at going forward, and it shortens up the time period by a year and a half.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Grimmin?
So Tom, putting it in layman's language, if you followed the refinancing, we would appreciate about $367,000 in actual savings.
That's correct. And that's achieved over time. Obviously, that doesn't show up in your bank account tomorrow.
No, but I
yeah.
mean, over a period of time.
Right, yep. And
Because we're locking in interest rates at this, well, you show a 60-year low on here.
right, so we would be close to the 60-year low of where interest rates are. Now, go ahead.
Tom, the next question is, we have looked at inflation as being kind of a ever-present situation, and given the state of our economy, inflation is a concern to some. So the only way you combat inflation is raising taxes, or raising interest rates, right?
That's correct.
So consequently, if we do have inflation and the feds decide to raise interest rates, we've lost an opportunity for savings purposes. Is there a negative in by doing this, Tom? Is there a negative in this? Because it just makes sense from what you've outlined that we do this. But is there a downside to this anywhere?
Well, you'll especially on the shop. I don't think there's any downside because of where interest rates are at and the fact that your bonds are currently callable on the Courthouse Edition. I don't think there's any reason not to pursue that. On the taxable bonds, yes. I mean, you'll end up in the taxable advanced refunding of the shop. There is a little bit of a downside. I mean, obviously, there's always a downside. So your bonds are currently callable, I believe, in 3 years. That'll change. So your call date will get pushed out further because you'll have new bonds. And then if interest rates, and this is where you look at that chart, if interest rates go down from here until the new call date, or the call date on whatever, or on the old bonds, that would be lost opportunity, lost savings that you could have had if interest rates go down. So that's, again, that's why they pay you guys the big bucks. If you think interest rates are gonna stay the same or go down, as I mentioned, I don't know if I said go down, but I did say if they stay the same, your savings actually goes up waiting until the call date. If you think interest rates are gonna go up, bump up because of inflation, or they're just ungodly low and they're gonna go back to maybe a normalized rate, then I would say this is an opportunity, to move forward on. And that's why I proposed it or sent it forward.
Well, it's kind of like pricing commodities too. If you got a strike price, or you got a price of corn at $5 and some cents, so you want to sell it, or you think it's going to go up, or you think it's going to go down, We
Right.
don't have a crystal ball.
Right,
But on-
exactly.
But on this one, it would make sense to me that we do this because we have an actual very low interest rate. We do have a savings projected out there over time, I understand. But at least we're putting ourselves in a better position by doing that.
That's correct. Yep.
Thank you, Tom. With that, so we've got two different resolutions regarding these bonds. I'd like to handle the courthouse one first.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Tom.
Sure, go ahead.
Tom, on the highway shop, what does the call date get pushed back to?
Well, it'll probably be it'll probably be a 5-year call. Let me look and see from the numbers. Yeah, so you're, we moved the thing, but right now, actually, your call date is two, you're just looking at the numbers here. Your call date is really, I think I said 3 years, it's actually 2 years, so it's out to 12/1/23. As you can see up here in this, right here, this kind of shows you what the call date is. So my thought is we would probably go to another 5 or 6 year call. So it's 2 years out right now. If we did 6-year call, you'd be out to, 27, so that would increase your call date to 2027, or 4 years, that's what I meant to say.
2027 will be the call.
Yep.
And the lifetime savings is 255,000, correct?
That's correct. And you can still refinance, you can still refinance in the future if you'd like with taxable bonds at any time. And then you can wait until the call date and do tax exempt bonds in the future on this issue also.
And then does the call date change on the courthouse refi, or does that stay the same?
In essence, with, what are we projecting? My thought is with it being 4 years, you would probably have non-callable bonds after that. We might, be able to get a one, out there, have a 2024 call in case you have some additional funds built up. But most likely, you're not levying additional taxes to pull in a bunch of extra money to call the bonds early. Does that make sense? So it's just over time that bond redemption fund has accumulated money, and now we can use that to pay off the bonds as part of the refinancing.
But the 2024 date can be relied upon for as to when those bonds are called?
Yes, if you're asking me to make a commitment today, I'd say yes.
Okay.
I'll get you a 2024 call on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So with respect to the resolution for the courthouse bonds and refinancing of those, consider a motion to approve.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
I have a motion by Schmidt, a second by Commissioner Aaron's. Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Then I'd go ahead and move on to the highway shop and resolution authorizing the refinancing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carried. We had a tabled item from last week, a renewal quote with Jensen Insurance. And were there any motions made at that? I had to leave, so were there motions
Just that it was
made?
tabled.
Just a motion to table.
But there hadn't been a prior motion.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So what happened?
There's potential for conflict, so in light of that, we chose to wait until full board would be here. So with that, Madam Chair, I'd move to remove it from the table and present it for discussion and motion.
Okay, I have a motion to remove it from table. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. So it's been removed for discussion, or removed from table for discussion. Why was it
Yeah,
tabled?
I'm curious.
That would require an executive session, Madam Chair, if you would like.
Okay, and that would be under,
Or you could simply have somebody motion and move on pretty quickly.
well, that's what I'm asking. What do you guys want to do?
What's the conflict?
Choose to disclose. If that's an executive session matter.
Aren't we required to disclose conflicts on the record?
No, you just abstain from voting.
Well, I don't know that I'm willing to do whatever, but I know we've had we've had this same insurance company for, well, I don't know, years, 20, 30 years. They've done extremely well. They take great thing. I have no problem in improving them, but I certainly don't want to,
Just for clarification, I would ask for a motion of executive session so all board members can hear the reason for a potential conflict. Not acknowledging conflict, but potential conflict. And that would be under Mr. Golden, legal. Thank you.
All right. For the request from Commissioner Poppins for executive session, is there a second?
Was there a motion, Madam Chair?
yeah, he made a motion.
Okay, I'll second it.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
Yes, I believe that the QMPs that they're using at the moment, one or two of them are going on vacation. Minnehaha County uses this person on a regular basis. She's filled in from time to time in order to give coverage, and so they're just asking for her to be another one that is qualified for Lincoln County in case we need to use her.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. And we have a first reading.
This is the first reading for an ordinance of Lincoln County, South Dakota, rezoning the property legally described as Lot 1, Hoffman Addition, Southwest Quarter, the Southwest Quarter, Section 31, Township 100 North, Right 50 West from the A1 Agricultural District to the C Commercial District, and amending the official zoning map of Lincoln County. Location, parcel ID 100 50 31 J001.
Good morning. Toby Brown representing County Planning. Good morning again, Toby Brown representing County Planning. The applicant for this item is Scott Hoffman and siblings. Scott Hoffman and his siblings are also the owners of this parcel. This parcel is approximately 2,600 feet south of the City of T corporate limits. Parcel size is 2 acres. It's this subject parcel right here up on the screen. And the purpose for this, the applicant identified in the application, subsequent conversations with myself, that he intends to sell the property. This property does not have a building eligibility, so in his terms, to generate additional revenue for the sale of it, he would like to rezone this property to commercial. As you can see, this property is within the subdivision authority of the City of T. Our comprehensive plan, the Lincoln County Comprehensive Plan, identifies this specific parcel as urban expansion area. So with an urban expansion area designation, the county hasn't identified a future land use for it, not agricultural, not residential, not commercial, or industrial. So we look towards the City of T's comprehensive plan. The City of T's comprehensive plan identifies this area as an employment center. And so an employment center, for their terms, would be something more along the lines of an industrial type area. They've identified this entire area as a future employment area. So essentially, a commercial rezone would be a down from what they've anticipated for a future land use for this property. The Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing last month. There's quite a few neighbors to the south of this property that was in attendance. Those property owners utilize their property for rural residential purposes. They feel that this rezone would be a conflict, as well as they were concerned with that there was no concept plan associated with the application. Again, the county does not require a concept plan as part of a rezoning application. We encourage it, but even if one is submitted, it's not a condition of approval of it, so it's not a guarantee of that. The Planning Commission, always, as you know, always does affirmative motions. Their affirmative motion failed 0 to 5. With that, you have scheduled this as the first reading. The second reading of this will be on October 26th at your meeting. At that time, you will conduct a public hearing as well as consider a second reading of this ordinance before you. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Thank you.
Toby, that land from, I would take in the white, just below this section, that's across the High Line, correct?
Yes, but
Now, wasn't there another commercial property that wanted to locate up there, and we had quite an issue on that? And didn't they come to some resolution between the landowners and the individual that wanted to put something up there? Kind of I forget.
yes, so this property here, and it hasn't shown up on the county's parcel browser yet, but this property, the board rezoned to light industrial 2 months ago.
Yep.
That property, we also just issued a conditional use permit last month for a contractor shop on that property. That applicant worked, I think, in my opinion, worked well with the surrounding landowners to kind of take into some of their concerns and some of those things. In fact, those property owners showed up at the public hearing and voiced support for the applicant. And so I think the biggest concern with this one is there's no concept plan with it. So of course, the neighbors are concerned, what could it be? And so the mind wanders on that part of it. But your role in this process is to say, is this appropriate land use commercial, regardless of if they tell us it's going to be storage units or that like?
Is there any chance that the property owners to the south and to Mr. Scott, have engaged in any kind of dialogue to talk about what it is that he intends to do, or to give assurances to them to take away some of the anxiety and some of the objections they may have?
No.
Can we suggest to Mr. Hoffman that he perhaps engage in those people, and by the time we get here for the 26th, that they may have answered all of those questions?
Well, I think, of course, yes, and we're continuing to have that dialogue with him,
Okay.
but the result of this doesn't change. He's intending to sell the property for commercial uses. That concerns the neighbors. And, you know, as I've said before, this is a mixed-use area. There's residential uses, there's rural residential uses, there's agricultural uses, there's industrial uses, there's commercial uses. As well as you're aware is that the highway superintendent, myself, sit on a task force or committee to look at the redoing of this intersection here. And so that's gonna change a lot of this area as well, too. I think, you know, this is a tough one. This is indicative of what we experience in the county with a lot of these growth areas, transitional areas and things like that. I think one of the comments that the Planning Commission made though at the meeting was they felt that maybe this was just premature, that it's just not ready at this time to do that, that maybe more when T gets there that they can develop their plans and develop their processes with it.
Isn't there a car lot located on this property?
Not on this property, no. There's one over here,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
storage
Okay.
units here, there's quite a bit of commercial activity in this
Okay.
area here.
Thank you.
Toby, how long has the residential housing been here?
This particular piece here, I think was the 80s with this one. There's a residential use here. These ones were lots of record that were developed. As you can see, they're not true residential zone properties. Their building eligibility is utilized on these parcels here. I believe this development occurred just before density zoning in the early 90s.
If we had to do this all over again today, and granted, you were not part of this effort as part of the planning team back then, we probably wouldn't put residential housing next to a interstate interchange, would we?
We had no control over that. Now we
Okay.
wouldn't, yeah, we wouldn't plan for rural residential along the interstate.
Commissioner Aaron's?
Yep,
Right.
this isn't our public hearing on this, so
I wanna make-
I'd like to end discussions on it and wait till the
Could I
second
make one
reading.
comment? Commissioner Aaron, just for a record, the first house that was put in and that corner, we turned that down as a commission, as we have turned down many of those. They took us to court, and in the court case overturned our ruling and cited for the landowners because that's where the water accumulates, that's where everything was going to be. But the courts decided that for the landowner, and that's how that housing thing got started.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Schmidt. I think that kind of answers my question.
That's true.
All right, we'll move on to item 5. Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning. I just asking for approval to place our 2022 vehicle order. Just to kind of put it in perspective, we ordered at the same time last year and just got our last vehicle last week. So with the vehicle issues they're having, building vehicles and computer chips, I'd like to get a jump on it and get them ordered so we get them before the end of the year.
And these are the vehicles that we approved in your budget,
Correct.
correct?
I'd order them today and they wouldn't be here till spring or fall.
Sure,
So payable in 2022.
understandable.
And there's no guarantee.
Correct.
You've heard the request, is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you, thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Morning, Terry.
Good morning. Here looking for approval to purchase mastic sealant material off of Lake County's bid from Brock White. We're looking to get about a truckload of this material. 63 cents a pound is the bid. It's gonna come up to, I don't know, they said it depends on the number of pallets on the truck, depends on which type of trailer they get, so I can't give you a definite answer of what the total of this will be, but it's gonna be between $30,000 and $35,000 worth of material, so,
I have a question, sir.
yes.
What is Brock White? What is it?
Brock White's a vendor
Oh,
in Sioux
okay.
Falls. Similar to Stan
And
Houston.
the mastic material, let's try that one.
It's a material that we put in, it's almost really similar to, the microsurfacing that we do.
Yeah?
Except this here is, you can confine it to, and mainly we're gonna use it for transverse cracking. Where where you cut cracks and then all of a sudden they start dipping in really bad. We did this several years ago up, through Harrisburg because it was so terribly rough.
Okay.
And that'll help us buy some time before, needing an overlay or anything, so hopefully.
For the request, is there a
Madam
motion?
Chair, I'd move for approval.
Thank you. Is there a
I'll second it.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, John.
So as you see in your meeting notes, I would like to move forward and purchase the carpet to replace in the auditor's office. It is the last of the major suites that we need to do for what we've been doing over the last 4 years.
John, what's the cost of this?
It's about $10,000 with the installation and the purchase of the carpet. The carpet itself would just be a little over, well, $6,500.
10K all rolled up?
Correct.
Is this the last of the carpet replacement or?
Well, I originally had wanted to move on to do the sheriff's office next year. We've pulled that out of the budgets for next year for obvious reasons, to include the potential of the sheriff's office moving with the new building. And then the following year would have been state's attorneys, and I was just, slowly working my way through the building. But without a doubt, this is the last of the open suites, and there is heavy carpet damage that this is really needed.
Is this
so-
original?
Yeah, that's
Yep.
what I was gonna ask.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
from-
Original carpet,
correct,
it's
yes.
brand new. Yeah.
Correct.
All right. You've heard the request. Is there a motion? Can you go into a little more detail about the damage to the carpet in her office?
So one thing that happened when the building was built is, for whatever reason, there was never any chair mats purchased at the time. So these cubicle areas have had the same chair traffic over the same spot, well, for the last 9 years, I guess. So that has heavily damaged the carpet to where, it's just, you can't bring it back with a shop or with floor cleaning of any type.
I mean, is it coming up? Is it?
No, it's just,
Rip.
it shows heavy wear. And if you remember from I guess my thinking is rather than let the whole building fail and at year 20 or whatever year that magic number would be to replace all the carpet, I've been slowly replacing one suite at a time.
So this is a budget, in your budget?
Yes, this is in my budget.
This is
I
in your
budgeted
budget.
$15,000 for this. It's gonna fall about $10,000.
So it'd be under your budget projection?
Correct. One of the reasons why I budgeted heavier, because I typically would wall paint. I'm not doing that with the timeline we have. And in the past, like when we did the treasurer's office, I had Interstate Office Products come back in, remove all the furniture for the days while they're doing it, and then come back and reinstall it. We're going to move it in-house and have a plan to do that.
So there won't be any labor cost other than the laying of the carpet itself?
I mean, we will have labor, in-house labor costs, of course, but we will absorb that within my budget too.
So are these are they rolls of carpet or are you using the
It's-
squares?
It's currently rolled carpet, but yes, we're replacing it with carpet tile
With the
squares.
tiles?
Correct.
Okay.
Which is also a change that I made as I've been moving forward, so.
And the advantage of that is why?
So if there is some kind of heavy damage or anything, we can replace that,
Yeah.
those individual tiles.
Yeah, you just, if you have something, yeah, it's like patching a highway.
Right.
Yeah, you don't replace the whole thing, you just replace the damaged portion of it.
All right, we've got a request in front of us, so is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
I'm gonna, just a second, Sherry, on that, Bill, are we gonna talk about number 9?
Do that. I don't know if we want an executive session on it before we have that discussion or not.
Okay, all right, well, let's move on with the poll pads then, and then we'll go into that one. I thought maybe it was gonna be quick, but maybe not.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I apologize for not putting the original quote along with the information. I do want to purchase the poll pads for the election cycles. With the purchase of the poll pads, we're going to reduce the phone calls that come into the auditor's office. General election of 2020, we were missing calls because we had people calling and asking where they were registered to vote, or where their polling place was, because they weren't aware of where they were registered to vote. So that would simplify things for my office. We would be able to focus on the calls that come in for provisional ballots or the heavier election questions. We believe it would increase the efficiency at the polling locations. Again, with the people being registered in the wrong spot, they'd be able to find out instantly rather than waiting in line, then having to do the phone call, then, they would find out right away where they were registered, they could go there. We can recoup some of the cost, the purchase costs of if we were to rent them out to the cities. I have had discussions with a couple cities. They are interested in renting them during their elections. It's not gonna be the total cost of the $10,000 a year, of course, but it would be and then they would pay for the service on it. And this sets our county up for growth. We keep talking about how we wanna move into, voting precinct, or voting poll places. This would set us up for that. Now, with the poll pads, I do understand everybody's concern about it being electronic and on the internet. We do not have to do that at this time. We can have the machine set up. It would just have our information on it. It would not be hooked up to the internet. That's one way to do it. When they do have it hooked up to the internet, though, we can see what the turnout is at a selected polling place. But again, that's not a make or break deal. The Secretary of State has been in contact with No Inc. regarding the security of the machines, and he is getting a manual pamphlet put together as to the security of the machines. So now we would just request, the cost is the $75,000. When they come down to do the, what they call in the quote, the white glove treatment, that is reimbursable through HAVA funds. So that would not be as a cost to the county. So the $10,000 a year would be over 5 years.
So, if they're not live, what do they do?
Well, if they're live, they would, and we have polling places rather than
But if,
precincts.
I'm just saying if they're not live,
Right, they would be able to tell a person when they come in instantly that they were at the wrong place. When they're not live, they can also, what happens is at the end of an election, we bring the book back in, and it's got everybody's barcode on it. So we sit there for 40 hours at least and scan every barcode to update people's voter information. This would be a live update, or not live, but we would plug the poll pad into the computer, and within 24 hours, we would have the election, not canvassed, but it would be updated into the total vote as to how many voters were there obviously not what their vote was, because this has nothing to do with the ballots. It's still gonna be paper ballots.
So, Sherry, I walk into my precinct. I vote in precinct 215. And let's say I walked into 216, because those are conjoined precincts normally, meaning that we all vote in the same church. But this year we didn't, because the church 57th in Minnesota is under construction. So it got moved.
Well, that's not the reason. The reason that you didn't vote in the same church is because the church decided not to let us have the polling place there.
Was that because of the construction or because
No,
of?
because they had other obligations.
Okay, so that's good to know. I didn't know that. And I don't think a lot of people I talked to said, well, the road's under construction, so
Yeah.
maybe that's why.
No,
we're
the
not
only
voting.
time we change precincts is when the church will not allow us to be there.
Sure. And I think you guys have done a good job of that in the past. I think this year, maybe in the future, what we need to look at is, because there was a change in polling places, maybe looking at advertising all of the polling places in all the local newspapers.
Much like we did. We're legally required to.
Yeah, and I think maybe we need to do like a nice big advertisement as opposed to the legal classified ads or something.
It's a pretty big ad, but yep.
Okay.
I think we can make it bigger, yep.
Yeah, and I think that would probably help.
And we have it on our website and
Right. And so I get these people who are like, I'm 80 years old and I don't have a smartphone and I'm not computer literate and all
Yep.
that. I get that part. I understand that. I know some people who are 80 years old who are computer illiterate and still didn't know where to vote, and
Yep.
that's fine. But going back to the issue of the poll book, so I walk into 216 by accident, and I put my driver's license in there, and what is it gonna tell me?
it's gonna tell you that you're at the wrong polling location, that you need to be at 215, and it will actually give you directions to it.
Right, so it'll say.
And tell you which church it's at or whatever, where you
Sure.
need to go. Yep.
Sure. So, but the person will still have to wait in line to insert their driver's license and all that, right?
Yep, well, yeah, we're trying to think of another way to do it, but I mean, lines are inevitable.
Right. And it hasn't been so bad, like you
Right.
see on TV where people are snaked around the building.
Well, I can tell
waiting
you
outside.
in T, it was that bad.
Okay.
In T, it was that bad because they have two books that they have to look at. So then they have to make sure they're in the right place. So then they're flipping through the books.
Sure.
If they would have had two poll pads in there, they would have zing and gone. I mean, because you got to you do the license, and then the next person writes the name, and you've got 3,000 people in that district that want to vote.
Right.
And in that 2020 election, it was a good turnout in T, so.
So who's checking to make sure you are you on your license? Like, how does that work? I mean, I could walk in with Joe Blow's driver's license and
When
do
they
this?
show up, they show them the license, because it's still their responsibility to look at the picture and the name,
Okay.
and then they zip it.
Okay.
So, yep. No, that was my same question, and they were like, nope, that verifies everything. I was like, nah, it doesn't. You'd still have to show the precinct worker the picture on the license to verify who you are.
Right.
Like right now, I have to take my license out or an approved form of ID, and they still have to look at it anyway.
Yep.
And then they match me up with my name and my picture, along with what's in the poll book.
Yep. And not that I want to use the pandemic for anything, but it'll prevent that poll worker from having to touch your license. Because you can hold it up, and then you zip it, and then, so, I mean, and I'm not using that as an excuse, because I think that's been overrun, but that is another thought about it. And then again, the biggest thing is we talk a lot about how everybody in Sioux Falls and other places are unhappy that they have to live on this side, work on this side, vote on this side. If we get these, it's just a step more or better towards us being able to have the poll centers rather than a precinct.
Has any kind of policy been developed by yourself or other auditors that you could draw upon regarding the establishment of poll centers and the incorporation of e-poll books into that?
I have not looked at the policy into it. I haven't really moved towards the voting place, or I keep, haven't looked towards the vote centers. But, you know, I mean, that might be a couple years down the road still. But I know that there are Yankton, Hutchinson, a few other Brown County, they have went ahead and signed up with No Ink, and I think Brown County is vote centers, so I could reach out to them and see.
Now, with regard to the technology piece of this, do the machines communicate wirelessly?
If they are not live, they do not. And in order to have the vote centers, they would have to be live, because you would have to know if you went to this precinct or if you went to this precinct to prevent you from double voting.
Or if you tried to vote twice.
Correct.
Yeah, so
But if
for
in
example,
a precinct location, they would not have to be live.
yeah, so for example, with a vote center, I live in Beersford, I work in Sioux Falls, and maybe during my lunch hour, I want to run to the nearest polling location and vote. That's the intent, you know,
That-
just so the public understands.
Yep.
The rationale behind a voting center.
Yep.
But vote centers do require this kind of technology, right?
Yes. Something like
Or-
this.
Or they would require all 31 precinct books would have, I mean,
Well-
theoretically, you could do it with manual technology, but it would be really onerous, right?
Yes. I mean, what are you gonna do, call each other?
Right, right.
Or you're gonna hope for the faith of the voter, which I know we have great voters, but hope for the faith of the voter that they didn't vote in Sioux Falls and get to Beersford and be like, oh, did I vote? Didn't I
Three
vote?
different places.
Yeah,
Right,
you know,
right.
so,
And didn't we try these during the July election?
we did, and unfortunately, I put them in slow precincts, so we didn't get the full effect of it, but, yeah. Yep, we did try them, and I don't think there was a problem with them. I know that Joel used them.
Yep.
They were used in T, Commissioner Schmidt used them. The workers in T, you know, they do right now have one district. They have, 2 books, A through whatever, and L through Z. And so now they have 2 people that you have to come up to, so you have 2 lines. And she said if we could get it moved to that, they probably wouldn't even have to split and make a separate district.
Yeah, in my precinct, they use 2 books because there's so many people there.
Yep.
You know, there's, I think, over 2,500 voters now because of the growth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that'll change once the state and the county does the redistricting
Yep.
process. That'll level out. But, yeah.
Did we use them last week?
No, we only had them for the one election.
Okay.
Sherry, can these things be hacked? Can they be?
Well, if we don't have them live, there's absolutely no chance.
Okay.
If we, you know, move to vote centers and we move to live, if they do get hacked, and I think that the gentleman that was on the phone discussed that, it's all encrypted. And the information that you would get is no different than buying your voter registration. It's not gonna say how you voted or anything else, but people can go in and buy your voter list and get all your same information. But these are encrypted, and I would have to defer to them because that's beyond my pay grade, but they, you know, they were assured that, especially with them not being live, there's nothing to worry about.
So is this to actually buy these, or is this a continuing, are they gonna replace these and then, I mean, is this gonna be a $10,000 expense every year just because they're gonna age out?
Nope, 10,000 for 5 years. They'll be good for 5 years.
Okay, and then we own them.
Then we own them.
Are they, what's the expected lifetime of these poll pads?
I'm not sure on that, but they're just regular iPads, so.
Right, so
I
they're
mean,
gonna
I
be
have
obsolete.
one from a long time ago.
Right, so they might be obsolete in 5 years.
Right.
I mean, are they?
And they, you know, if we do move more towards vote centers, they may be more expensive.
Sure.
We've seen a lot of that where we wait to do something and then we triple the cost, so. But yeah, I don't know the life expectancy of them. I don't know if it's the 5 years. I just know that they set up the payment arrangement to be out 5 years. I would imagine that they would last longer than that.
Are they warranted for that long? Over the span of the contract, or
I would imagine that they would
somebody
be.
drops one and breaks it? What's that look like?
You know, I don't know.
Okay.
I know they've got protective cases on them. They're pretty much hands-free. But you know, that could happen.
Sherry, onto the financing piece of this. So 77,500 for the initial purchase, and then as you said, it's gonna come down to $5,000 over 5 years?
I think it's 10,000 over 5.
10,000 over 5 years. And there could be some HAVA reimbursement on that?
Okay, so on the part of the quote, and I do again apologize that it's not there, on the part of the quote where it says white glove treatment, and it's X amount of dollars, that part so far is covered under HAVA. So the technology itself is not. And then also you have to consider if we did, for whatever miracle, we're able to use HAVA money to purchase these, then they would only be able to use in federal elections.
Correct, and so that would have to coincide with basically the primaries.
Primary and general, yep.
Right. Now, which budget, I can't recall, whose budget is this coming out of? The elections or the
Elections.
auditor's office?
Nope, elections.
Okay, so this is coming out of the elections budget. And so this 77.5 was put into the elections budget for the purpose of being able to.
Not the
purchase these?
77.5, just the payment.
Just,
The 10,000 payment.
okay,
And we've got $10,000 in there for furniture and fixture that would do the first year. And then I've got $10,000 in for next year for this.
so really these are on the installment plan then?
Yes. Yep.
For the 77.5 is
Yep.
paid over the course of?
Mhm.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So this extra 20,000, is that interest? What is that?
There's no interest on it.
So,
That would be the licensing, because you have to have a license on it. But I don't know that it's 20. I think the whole quote was 80-something.
As far as professional development and use, that's part of the contract that we'd have with them. They'd show us how to use them and.
Oh, yeah, they do training on them. When I've talked to them, I said, you know, we could probably go through 2 elections, the primary and the general, and get the training on it. Once we get trained on how to set them up, I mean, it should be, we have an amazing IT staff that would support us on it, so.
Sherry, Commissioner Aaron's and I share the same polling place, and it is very busy and congested. So, you have a split to go, you know, wherever your residence is. Does this help relieve some of the difficulty you have in securing individuals to work at these polling places? Because I know you always are pressed to try to find people, you know, and some of those individuals, you know, can't stay, and when you talk to them about it, they're pretty dedicated. But does this alleviate any of that situation for you?
We would still have to have at least 3 people, 3 to 5 people per polling place. What it could look at potentially doing is alleviating our polling locations, so we could have super precincts to have more polling locations in one area, so everybody would go to one instead of going to, you know, having 7 locations in Sioux Falls. We could maybe move it down to 3 locations.
Have you talked to any, and I think this needs to be totally vetted, and all these questions need to be answered. Have you talked to anybody where they've used these polling books, where they have failed, and what has been the result of that? I mean, I don't know about South Dakota, but I mean, have you checked out anything outside of that?
Well, in Sioux Falls, Bev Chase uses them for her elections, and they have vote centers. She highly, highly recommends them, and she said the only problem ever was with human error. So the pads did not fail. It was the people that were working and maybe had an issue. But she had no issues in the Sioux Falls election that she just had with them.
Sherry, I just want to clarify, you're not, I know you used the word super precinct just now, but at this time, you're not endorsing that
No.
concept, are you?
Nope.
Okay, because I think it's controversial, to say the least, especially where they get located
Yep.
and what parts of town and what
Yep.
parts of the county.
But a super precinct really is no different than a vote center.
That's correct.
But that's
It-
not where we're at yet.
The term super precinct, I think, in the minds of some presumes the closing of an existing precinct, though, precinct location, and also necessarily presumes consolidation, thus a change in their regular voting location.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be happening
Okay.
for a while.
Okay.
So you would still use the precincts would stay the same. These polling books would not be active. at
You
this
mean
time.
live?
Live, right?
We can make them that way, yep.
So they would remain, the hackers would not be.
There would be no internet connection to them at
No
all,
internet connection for them at all.
at all.
And you would or wouldn't use them everywhere, or it would just be highly concentrated area polling places?
Well, we've kind of debated on that, and would we need one in Hudson? More than likely not. I think it's gonna help us more in Sioux Falls, Harrisburg. I'm not opposed to using them everywhere else, but for a voter turnout in Hudson, it might not be the best use down there. But that would be something we would look at further. We would order enough now to have one at least in each precinct, so. But my concern would be having them in the smaller locations, Hudson, Delaware, how efficient they would be.
So not to be redundant, Sherry, but we have $77,000, which is an issue. So do we pay that immediately, or is that expanded over a period of years?
Over 5 years.
So that, for $77,000 goes over a 5-year period?
Yep.
Okay. Now, of that $77,000, what kind of monies would be available to offset that particular cost?
For the cost of the poll pads, there is no HAVA funds available at this
Okay.
time. But for the support, there are.
So does that $77,000 include the support?
I'd have to pull up the agreement.
Okay.
I think it was 80-some thousand with the support.
Is there somebody available from Nowink that can come and talk to us again, or?
Sure.
I guess I'm kind of leaning towards tabling this item to get some of these other questions answered.
I am as well.
If you can give me a list of your questions, though, so that he knows what he's coming into, that might be easier.
Madam Auditor, what's the timeline for getting these in place in time for the next election?
It'd be about $15,000 a year.
I don't know. I would say they would probably need at least a month, 2 months to get
So
them.
we have a little bit of time then.
Well, yeah, we have a little bit of time. I don't know how long we want to wait, the availability of the iPads or whatever else.
So if I'm offering a motion to table, if I motion to table for 2 weeks or for 2 meetings, is that enough time, do you think?
That's
for-
fine. Yep.
Okay.
But if you guys could have questions,
Yep.
specific questions, that would be great, because then he knows what he's coming into.
So that would, we either do the last meeting of the month or the first meeting of November. Madam Chair, I would offer that motion at your discretion to pick the date.
Thank you. Is there a second?
What was it?
Motion to table at discretion, either the last meeting of this month or the first meeting of November at the chairman's
Let's
discretion.
do the first meeting of
Well, I'll
November.
second that because I think there's a lot of unanswered questions here that need to be brought forth.
So we'd be tabling it till the first meeting in November.
Okay?
With that clarification, does that change your motion?
Nope, not at all. Thank you for the clarification.
Commissioner Schmidt, does that
I'll
change?
second that.
Okay.
So, Sherry, what you're proposing is you're gonna have technical specialist from knowing.
That's kind of why I want to know your questions, because whether I can bring in Dusty, or he needs to call the corporate office and have the security guy, or he need, who do we need to have here?
Yeah, I mean, I know Dusty testified in front of the Minnehaha County Election Review Committee when I was on it, 2012. Gave a lot of good testimony. I think, in fact, he even testified about the fact that there's been previous attempts here in South Dakota to hack this kind of technology. I know that he knows these issues. I'd be interested in hearing from him, but I think I'd also be interested in having the ability, at least, to talk to someone with some kind of, advanced technical expertise.
Yep, so I'll have him have the guy that called in the last time call again.
Thank you.
Jerry, could we also get, if Brown County has had this, could we have one of their, like their commission chair or somebody available to give their experience?
I will find out if they've gone through an election yet, or if it was just a matter that
Or
they just
Pennington
ordered them.
County, one or the other, I think.
Or I can talk to Bev Chase.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
We just need to, Sean, you want to call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries. I'm going to ask for a motion to go into executive session
So moved, Madam
under
Chair.
SDCL 125, 2 sub 1 and sub 3 and sub 4.
Okay. Got a vote.
Who was the motion?
I made a motion.
Thank you.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's. Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
Is that it, Madam Chair?
That's gonna be it. I'm gonna remove number 9 from the agenda for now, till it's appropriate to put it back on. And, I've got a motion to adjourn.
So move, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll?
Who was the first? Thank
Oh,
you.
I'll second his motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.